Good afternoon, guys. Welcome to the podcast. I've got a fantastic guest for you today, Dorothy Mashburn, and she is an expert in contract negotiations. And this is an extremely important topic, especially for the executives and high income professionals, whether for the doctors, if they're coming out of residency or fellowship, negotiating a contract, how to negotiate. She's got a very interesting standpoint, and I'm really happy to have her on the show to examine how to get the best deal in a negotiation. So, Dorothy, welcome.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, briefly introduce yourself, and I'm really excited to dive into the meat of the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm a negotiator. I've been negotiating for 18 years in large multinational commercial deals. Part of my passion is also empowering executives, mid career executives, on claiming their worth. I do that by helping them create strategies around their salary negotiations. Or if they start their own consulting business, how to create pricing strategies to attract the ideal customer in a way that is very valuable for both sides.
Yes, that's really beautiful. And, I love to dive right into the meat or the heart of it. I'm a surgeon by training. And so, one of the things about when you say know your worth, and a lot of doctors, they undercut themselves. They take the first offer. They don't know their worth. And some of them that they start coaching or consulting companies. And what's interesting, this very common fear, I experienced this fear as well, when they set their hourly rate or price target for a project, and then the client asks, how much is it? And then there's this pause and there's this very uncomfortable silence. And it's either you're afraid to say the figure or you step back and you say a smaller figure, but with more confidence. What is the psychology behind that, and how do you get over that?
Yeah, it's of course a confidence challenge, right? We know in our own minds all the things we're great at and also all the things we're not so great at. So the combination of those two things make us doubt our things that we're really great at. So what we assume or project is that the other side is judging us for all of our deficiencies and not necessarily paying us for the strengths. So the way to overcome that is think about value. What is that other side? And we're, as human beings, very poor at empathy, right? We know that and we work actively to fix that. But try to put yourself in the other person's shoes. And in this instance, think about what is it that they're getting from me? It doesn't matter what you charge as long as it is a certain multiple above that the value that they're getting. The only thing then left to resolve is that are you articulating that value to that other side? Not necessarily what it costs. So if example, I'll give if I spend for my business $10 on a advertising campaign and I get $50 back, then no brainer, right? No matter how much it costs, like maybe the advertiser can say $1,000. I don't know if $1,000 is good. It depends on what value you're going to give me for my 1,000. It's like resetting or reframing that concept.
Yeah. Another thing that happens during contract negotiations or when you're asking for the sale is there's this fear. Is like the client asks for the price, you give the price, but then it's, yeah, what if they say no? What if my price point is too high and they say no? What if, if I had said if I had undercut it by 10%, would they have said yes? Talk about the dangers of undercutting yourself just to get a sale.
Yeah, we live in a free economy. It's a free market prices, right? It's very important for the future of your own profession and the future of your own career not to undercut that. Because imagine if you're providing a value of $1 million, whatever that is, and you charge 10,000. Great, right? Significant ROI. Wow, what a huge ROI. But if you charge 5,000, the next time somebody's trying to purchase that same $1 million of value, it's going to say, last time you charged me 5,000, why would I pay you 10,000? You're destroying the market if you undercut. So that's one thing. Second, you are devaluing the worth that you're bringing. Now you've put yourself as a $5,000 product or service versus what you could have, which was a $10,000. So it's definitely not helping your own case if you do that.
Yeah, I love that. The next follow adjacent question is, and I've noticed this in my own business as well, like when I started to charge higher prices, I would get a higher number of no's, but like my revenue would be increasing and the quality of the client would actually be much better. And whereas if I was like charging, let's say we'll give the 5,000, 10,000 example, when I was charging less than that, where there would be more hassles, there'd be more just worse quality clients. They wouldn't follow through like, for results. It's just a miserable
Yep.
experience. Talk
Mhm.
about that. That's very counterintuitive.
It really is. And it is, you have the answer there in the question. It's very much the person who is willing to invest, they're thinking about value, the cheapest thing out there. So they're not already commoditizing your service. They're thinking about, if I spend this money, I'm going to get X or Y or Z. And that thing is important to them. And when they get that, then they feel fulfilled, or it's health, wealth, relationships, one of those three things that fulfills them. They're willing to do the work because that thing is important to them. But if they're going out getting a pack of gum, a mentality or mindset, then any shop will do, any gum will do, anything will do. It's not that critical of a decision for them. But that investment means that the thing is the whatever they're trying to achieve, that goal is important enough for them to invest and then work towards.
Yeah. Which brings me to this next question is because once I learned this and once I learned to set a price point and just basically put it out there and learn how to walk away. So you talk about timing and walking away. And how do you know when it's time to walk away from the negotiation if you're dealing with somebody trying to lowball you or just difficult, or what are the indicators that a deal is not worth pursuing?
Yeah. I talk a lot about, and negotiators talk a lot about what is termed as BATNA, your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. And that's just a fancy word for option B, right? So if you have a good option B, so whatever you're trying to achieve with this negotiation, say that's a net of $50,000, and your option B is a net of $55,000. So there is a point where you're saying it's not worth it, right? Because I can do this other thing, and that's going to be worth as much or if not more. So I'm going to walk away. So that's why we talk so much about preparation and knowing what it is that you're trying to go get when you're engaging in that negotiation. As long as your option B, this could be true for if you're trying to get a client. You could be saying, okay, my packages are $50,000. If I don't get this client, I need to still meet my year-end number. What are my options? So if my options are, for example, like I could pitch a few more clients and I can get that instead of wasting time trying to spend my energy, limited energy on trying to go with a value that is not at par with my services, then you could say, well, I'm going to walk away from this client. But if you say, I have no other option, this is the year end, this is the last day, and I'm going to have to knock this client in order to meet my number, then you can still negotiate it. They're lowballing you to say 5,000 might be worth it for you to stay in the negotiation.
Yeah, that's the thing is one thing because I'm an investor in real estate, and one thing they always say is everything is negotiable. So it's just what are your set points? What are your needs, wants, desires? What will you tolerate? What will you not tolerate? What are common ways people self-sabotage themselves in negotiations? How can they be consciously aware of these and how can they avoid these pitfalls?
That's a really good question. There's a pretty big list. So I'll pick a few. One is not knowing your value, right? So you've got to do you've got to do the research. It sounds like boring work, but you've got to understand that. You don't know what you're going to be able to ask if you don't know the market dynamics. The second is asking yes or no questions. So what we're trying to do with negotiations is creatively problem solve that everybody leaves happy afterwards, right? It's not, I don't believe in a negotiation of old times when they said a good negotiation, a good compromise leaves everybody unhappy. It's actually the opposite. You want to make sure that both sides get what they want. And generally speaking, both sides truly want different things. So it's possible to make the pie bigger and each side get more than what they came in to get. So you've got to ask curiosity-based, non-yes, no questions so that you understand what the other side is trying to do, right? So if in a salary negotiation, you're a physician and they said, I can't give you any more than 300,000, then you don't go, oh crap, then I'm leaving, right? You've got to go, oh, help me understand, where's that 300,000? What is the constraint that you're trying to face? Maybe they say, my base budget is set. Then you start asking, oh, is there another budget or another bucket of budget that you do have a little bit more flexibility, then you problem solve together. So those yes no questions really derail you. And then also making sure that you are managing your emotions. If you get if you don't you can use emotion, but use it strategically. If you use it where it's getting the better of you, then you need to take a break and go to the other room and ask for a break. But if you manage it where you're using it strategically, then it can really deliver dividends for you.
Yeah. And which brings me, because you mentioned high emotions, and one of the really key books that I really got a lot of key takeaways was Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss.
Uh,
He's basically a hostage negotiator, and like salary negotiation, yeah, it's talking about money. But like when you're talking about lives or just very high pressure finance, law, like these
Mhm.
$1 billion, how does your mindset shift with these tactics? Cause a lot of emotions are on the line. People's careers could be on the line. How do you approach these high stakes negotiations?
You've got to go back to what is it that you want to accomplish, right? That is your true north. Whether it's a hostage situation or not that I've been in a hostage yet, so I don't want to mislead people. But I would imagine this is how I would, after reading Chris's book, I was like, okay, this is how I do the multi-billion-dollar deals. Is you've got to say, what is it that I'm trying to do for my team? And that's everything goes with that, right? So regardless of what the other side is doing, maybe they're playing hardball tactics, maybe they're saying throwing the book and moving away, what you have to go get, right? That thing is not flexible. So then you let the other side do whatever they want to do. And then you say, okay, so let's get back to whatever that is you're trying to do. And knowing that and being very clear. Now that's more difficult than it sounds like, because usually in those deals, there are multiple stakeholders involved and everybody's trying to get something different. So you've got to fully get consensus within your internal teams to say, hostage, if in a hostage situation, hostage coming out alive is a win. Or is it hostage coming out alive and the hostage taker disarmed? So what is it that we are trying to exactly do? And then use that as your true north.
Interesting. I know we have the other question is one thing that I've really observed. I've always observed this, and especially with sales, and I think it's called controlling the line or control. It's basically like you have a narrative or a script that and I noticed that especially in sales, they try to stick to that, and it can lead to aggressive or a kind of a pushy kind of slant. So how do you when you're negotiating and you have this like very hard opponent and won't budge. What is your approach to opponents in this situation?
Yeah, I get that a lot, especially being a 5 foot to a woman of color, and you're negotiating with some of the very successful, aggressive CEOs across the world. I do get that a lot. You've got to just not let that ruffle your feathers, because if you do, then that the other side is won.
Mm,
And you don't want that to happen. Now, if you do it because you want to steer the conversation in a certain way, you can use it as a tool to say, I will not tolerate this kind of behavior. Let's get back to why we're meeting in the first place. But you don't do it because they have gotten under your skin. In the robots, people do get under your skin. We all have hot buttons. You can say, I need a break. Or you can say, hey, we haven't had a bio break in 15 minutes. Yeah, can we do a bio break for 15 minutes and go do that? But you can't let the other person see that they're getting under your skin. Usually, if it is a long-term relationship that you're trying to carve or craft, that kind of tactic usually backfires on the other person, because people have long memories. And you don't want to be in a long-term relationship, business relationship with someone who will use those tactics. Sometimes it's inevitable. Somebody just has more leverage over you. But for the most part, you want to do business long-term with people who will respect you and recognize that you do bring value. So that's something that you'll have to make a determination throughout the negotiation whether this relationship is worth it or not.
yeah. And talking about building confidence and sub portion are women, minorities, neurodivergent. How do these individuals or groups develop the confidence necessary to advocate for themselves in corporate environments?
Yeah, it is an ongoing learning for all of us, right? It's something that I've had to struggle with on my own. I'm an immigrant to the United States, and a lot of the rules are unwritten in a new culture.
Mm.
A lot of things are, and especially in corporate America, there's a lot of things that are unwritten, and there's not a lot of network and support. So you've got to make sure that you don't internalize when there is a setback. People nowadays talk a lot about embracing failure. The way I interpret that is really saying, yeah, failure happens, but that's not because I am terrible at X, right? It could be I was not aware of the X, Y, and Z. And so in the future, I'm going to do this. So not internalizing that and putting ourselves down a peg or two, that's my advice. And then second, there's a lot of additional pop culture stuff about imposter syndrome. It's okay, it is there, but it's imposter thoughts. It's not like you have a disease, right? So don't think about it as I've got imposter syndrome and I'm like now stuck. Think about it as I'm having imposter thoughts. It's pretty normal. A lot of people have it. And the way to get around it for me is identify what that is. It could be going for a walk. It could be running on your spin bike. It could be talking to a mentor. It could be any number of things. So be strategic about how you create that confidence around you and be intentional about who you work with or ally with. And the last thing I'll say on that is not everybody who gives you feedback is qualified to give you feedback. So, don't take every feedback you get as the line in the cement and say, this is how I need to change myself. Ask yourself, does that align with my values? Does that align with where I want to go to in the future? And then either take that feedback and change or discard that feedback.
Yeah, I love that. You take the good and discard the rest. Yes, I think Bruce Lee said that. How can people find out more about you, check out your work, follow your social media, and reach out to you if they need help with negotiations?
Yeah, thank you. So everyone can reach me on LinkedIn. I'm very visible on LinkedIn, Dorothy Mashburn. I also run my own podcast, Salary Negotiations Made Simple. I talk a lot about debunking myths, addressing anxieties, helping with confidence, and then tactics and techniques of negotiations. And my website is dorothymashburn.com. I have a free gift that I would love to provide to your audience. So if you want to add that to your show notes, I'm sure they'll find it very valuable.
Yeah, excellent. And thanks so much for coming on. And I encourage the audience to check out Dorothy's socials, give them a follow, reach out to her. And thanks again for the wonderful conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Chris.